Alright, if this confuses you, I guarantee by the end of this tutorial, you'll understand it like the back of your hand. I'm going to explain compression in a way so easy to understand that even your grandma can get it, and then explain how and when to use it, since that is what most tutorials do not cover. So first off, what does compression do? In the simplest terms, it's like an automatic volume control. It listens to your audio, and whenever something is too loud, it automatically turns it down for you. This is also known as reducing the dynamic range. So what is dynamic range? All it is the difference between the quietest and the loudest parts of your track. So imagine whispering versus shouting. That distance between the two waveforms, that's dynamic range. All compressors do is reduce this gap. Okay, cool. So let's dive deeper now. So there are 4 things that make up a compressor. First, we have the threshold. Threshold is basically the on-off switch for the compressor. It's a line you set, and the compressor doesn't even turn on until the audio volume or audio signal passes that line. So imagine you're at a library. This line is the librarian's tolerance level. If you speak too loud and cross that line, the librarian tells you to shut the fuck up. Next, we have ratio. This tells the compressor how much to turn the volume down after it's crossed the line. The higher the ratio, the more the volume is reduced. If I just turn up a little in like a 2-to-1 ratio, it's like a sweet hush from the old lady librarian.
Things fall apart.
And a ratio of, say, I don't know, 12-to-1. It's an absolute bitch of a librarian telling you to be a whole lot quieter.
Things fall apart.
And real quick, just so you're aware, here's what 2-to-1 and 12-to-1, for example, actually means. 3-to-1, for example, means that for every 3 dB of sound over the threshold, or the line, only 1 dB will be allowed to pass through. So again, the higher the ratio, the more volume reduction. After that, we have the attack. This is how fast the compressor turns down the volume after it crosses the line. Think of it as how quickly you lower your voice after the librarian tells you to be quiet.
Things fall apart. Things fall apart.
Finally, we have the release. This is how quickly the compressor turns off after the volume drops back below the line. Think of this as how much the librarian continues to shush you after you've already quieted down. If the release is set slow, the librarian holds a grudge for a while, and she takes longer to stop shushing you, even after you're under the line.
And time breaks your heart.
If the release knob is set fast, the librarian is chill, she stops shushing you right away.
Time breaks your heart.
So this covers the basics of most compressors. On some compressors, like the fruity limiter, which is super common, you're gonna see this a lot, there are a few extra knobs, like the knee and sustain. Knee controls how gently and smoothly the compressor turns on, kind of like blurring the threshold line. Knee and attack are often confused. So knee sounds similar, but it's not the same as attack. If you set the knee knob higher in fruity limiter, that actually represents a softer knee. Fruity limiter begins reducing that gain before the threshold is even reached. So imagine the librarian sort of eases into the shush instead of snapping right away.
And time breaks your heart.
So sustain in the case of fruity limiter is basically an overall smoothing function according to image line. Further statements from them kind of imply that it's just similar to increasing both the attack and release at the same time.
And time breaks your heart.
So now you understand the basics of compression and a few extras. Let's move straight into what compressors to use and when. So let's start out with digital compressors, obviously, like the ones that come stock with DAWs like FL Studio, Ableton, or paid ones like Pro C2. They usually have all the basic controls: threshold, ratio, attack. These types of compressors are very transparent, meaning they don't really add much tone or warmth like hardware does. They just do what you tell them to do. So let's just put this into action. I have this vocal, and as you can see, it has very quiet parts and very loud parts. That doesn't sound the greatest.
And time breaks your heart.
What we're gonna do is set our threshold. This is our line like we discussed. So if you're not using fruity limiter and you can't see the waveforms, you would look at your master.
And time breaks your heart.
So the lowest part peaks at about -15. So let's set the threshold to -15. And just to be safe with vocals, let's take it a little bit further to about -18, because I want the whole vocal to be compressed overall.
And time breaks your heart.
Much better. Let's just dial in the attack. Let's keep it pretty low, at maybe about 40 milliseconds, because I want the compressor to start compressing very quickly. And then I'm going to actually turn the release up quite a bit, because I want it to hammer down. So it's going to take 1021 milliseconds to stop reducing the volume.
And time breaks your heart.
So here's before.
Things fall apart. And time breaks your heart.
And after.
Things fall apart. And time breaks your heart.
If you got this far in the video, it's a little inside joke we do. It looks hilarious and super weird to people who don't know what you're talking about. Comment this. Yeah, appreciate it, bro. Let's get back to it. So now I'm going to show you guys 4 different ways you can instantly improve any beat using compression. The first biggest game changer ever is using a compressor on your kick. The reason people suck at this is simply because they're not setting their attack right. Your attack should be so high that it skips over honestly most of the kick. So this way it mainly only affects the back end tail of the kicks. Turn up your release really high too. And what this does is tightens everything up. And then turn your threshold down. Don't really worry about watching the meter or anything. Just turn it down until it sounds good. Anywhere between 3-to-1 and about 8-to-1. Anything over honestly about 6 or 7 is getting into a little bit too much, but sometimes a special kick can warrant that. So this is before. Not bad, but this is after. Much better, bro. Next thing I always do is add it to my snare. Again, you're going to want to have a similar attack setting, so this way it's skipping over the main peak of the snare. So this is before and after. And as you can see, I had a very high ratio of 8-to-1, so it's doing quite a bit. Next, after this, let's say these 4 things right here make up your melody. Create a channel called Compressor, and then route unlink, route unlink, route unlink, route unlink. And then add your compressor. Keep your ratio very, very low, 3-to-1 at very max. This time we're gonna keep our attack and release pretty low, and then again, turn the threshold down until it sounds about right to you. This kind of allows each melody aspect to be heard more. Before. This is after. So now you can hear that lead more. Finally, my last favorite thing to do is add it to the master.
Oh, don't add it to the master.
Okay, it's because you don't understand how compressors work, bro. Very, very little amount. Minus 3.5 dB. And then a very, very low, even like 1.5. I do too. Keep the attack really, really high, like 200 milliseconds. Release at like 1.3K. So this is without. With. All right, next let's dive into analog compressors and emulations. This is what you're gonna get the best sound out of, in my opinion. Stuff like the famous 1176, LA2A, Fairchild 670. A lot of these physical analog compressors don't actually have every single knob that you'd expect in a compressor. Like for example, the 1176 doesn't give you threshold or knee knob, but it does have fixed ratio buttons. These sorts of compressors are specialty compressors, and they're built with simplicity in mind. You know, fewer knobs, but very, very purposeful. Now, this gear costs a lot of money, but thankfully, now with AI and plugin emulation, you don't have to be rich to get a similar sound. You just head over to our sponsor, Master Channel. With Master Channel, you can upload your track to their famous Wes Clark algorithm to get an outstanding starting point, or even a final master.
Sobbing in my head and I don't wanna run alone. Been through this before, like my heart in the underground. Run till it stop and shut it down. 'Cause I don't wanna run out of love.
And here is why over 1 million songs have been mastered with Master Channel to date. So it's not just a quick loudness button. You can bounce out your mix through it, then A/B against your unprocessed to hear exactly what's missing. If you're sending beats or rough mixes out to artists, labels, or clients, quit that. I know you always don't have time to book a mastering engineer or do it yourself, but running it through Master Channel gives you that polished sound instantly, so your ideas will hit harder right out of your inbox. Now, back to compressors. So let's start with VCA compressors, such as the SSL bus compressor. These are by default precise, clean, and punchy. These are used best on drum and mix buses when you want extra punch and tight control. Next is FET compressors, like the famous 1176. These are intense, fast, and very aggressive, known for their high ratios. They're used best on vocals, snares, guitars, etc. Anything you want to really cut through the mix. After that, we have optical compressors, like the also famous LA2A. So the opticals are basically laid-back cousins of FETs. They're smoother, more natural, with program-dependent timing that adapts to the material. Well, technically attack and release are program-dependent on a lot of these comps, but ones like the LA2A just adapt more smoothly and naturally. You'd use them most commonly on vocals or bass, where you want gentle and automatic leveling. After this, we have the very mood compressors, like the famous Fairchild 670. These are great for mastering because it can really add some warmth and glue to the track overall, gently helping each individual instrument feel more cohesive.
I bet you tripping when I call. Told you, baby, don't you fall for long. Wow. And when I needed you the most, you were long gone on the road alone.
Now, there's obviously more to it than this, but I feel like this covers the most commonly used and famous compressors. Next, as a bonus, let's dive into some advanced techniques very, very briefly. Parallel compression. This is when you layer a heavily compressed version of a sound with the original dry version of the sound, instead of just applying compression to the original. This way you can keep the punch and clarity of the uncompressed signal while adding in the weight and density from the compressed signal. Think of it as adding like hot sauce to a meal. You mix in just enough to add the right amount of flavor. Great for creating punchy drums. Multiband compression is when you compress only a certain frequency range, whether it's the lows, mids, or the highs, or even a small upper or lower range. This is great for controlling harsh or boomy vocals or like shrilled violins or something without affecting anything else.
Running on my problems in these bottles, no, I'm not okay. Mama needed help with one less head to feet, I'm trying to shake.
Upward compression, which is my favorite, is a technique that turns quiet sounds up instead of turning loud sounds down. Combining up and down compression can create some really intense sound and bring out unique characteristics in things like drums and vocals. So now this feature isn't in every compressor, obviously, because most compressors compress down. This up and down feature is mostly found in plugins like MoTT and OTT.
Thought back don't make me sin. Black truck outside dropping. Big jet on the way hopping. Go crazy, make me spin.
And then sidechain compression is when you use one sound to trigger compression on another. A classic example is a kick drum that makes the bass duck. So this is just a few examples of advanced compression techniques, and they go so much deeper than this. So if you guys would like an individual compressor tutorial, definitely let me know. So if you're interested in learning more about mixing, mastering, or just both as a whole, check out these videos.